Ravens Wrap is brought to you by Bud Light, FlyLady.net, Ocean City Golf Club, Comfort Inn Gold Coast, Ravens247.com, the original Green Turtle Sports Bar and Grill, and hosted by the Blue Ox Bar and Grill.
It's another season of the Ravens Wrap Show. We are so happy this year to be able to take the show to TV on Comcast Beach TV. Also, for the fourth season on Delmarva's Rock Radio and the strongest signal Ravens affiliate on the Eastern Shore of Maryland and Delaware, 93.5 The Beach. We're in new digs this year, the Blue Ox, 127th Street and the Bay, Coastal Highway in Ocean City. And of course, we've got the infamous Ravens Roost number 44. Guys, give me I'm Mike Bradley, back for year number 4. I want to introduce, of course, the panel to my left. Former All-Pro safety, Mr. Baltimore Colt, Bruce Laird. Good to be back. To his left, editor-in-chief of Ravens247.com, voted Baltimore's best website covering the Baltimore Ravens, Tony Lombardi. Tony, welcome back. And of course, longtime OC local, hosts a ton of golf shows, did the Stallion Sports Show. I remember watching you growing up as a kid, Bobby, for many years.
That's great. Well, first one strikes.
51 hard.
Hard
years, right?
That's right.
Hey, we've got some great sponsors who we want to thank. Bud Light, also FlyLady.net, Ocean City Golf Club, Comfort Inn Gold Coast, of course, Ravens247.com, the original Green Turtle Sports Bar and Grill right down the street on 116th Street, and our new digs here, the Blue Ox Bar and Grill, for a brand new season here of the Ravens Wrap Show. And guys, it's great to have everybody back. Hey, we had no lockout, so we're good to go. The only casualty, training camp, not in Westminster this year, but still football on as usual. And I don't want to get caught too much up in the preseason and last season as well. Great year for the Ravens, though, 12-4. Lost in the division round to Pittsburgh, but as always, a busy offseason for the Ravens, and they did really well, I think, again, in April, Bruce, with the draft picks. We'll go through that list real quick. Jimmy Smith, corner, Torrey Smith, wide receiver, Tandon Doss, receiver, Ja Reed, tackle, Shockey Brown, corner, Pernell McPhee, defensive end, Tyrod Taylor, quarterback, and Anthony Allen, running back. Tell me who you like, maybe who you didn't like, and how these guys are going to make an impact this year.
Well, I'll tell you, Mike, what I really, really liked is what they did at defensive backfield. The corners are very, very strong. Kerry Williams is going to be a great, great addition. Of course, the first-round draft pick, that's what he's supposed to be. But they're loaded at corner, and I think they're going to need it because I really think right now with the loss of Todd Heap bothers me. It really does. Now, these young tight ends, do they have the potential? Absolutely. But potential can get you beat. And I just want to see what happens there. But I think all in all, the draft picks went very, very well for the Baltimore Ravens, and Ozzy's just going to have to continue to work his magic because I don't think they're done yet.
Yeah, when you look at this team and you look at the draft picks from top to bottom, it looks like this could be, and it's early, and I know that, but still, when you look at them from 1 through 7 rounds, Mike, I'm telling you, this looks like it could be the best draft the Ravens have ever had. I mean, Jimmy Smith is a guy that there was some risk associated with him because there was a lot of off-field issues that people were talking about, and that's why he dropped down to 26 in the draft. But guys like Pernell McPhee in the 5th round, and you've got Anthony Allen in the 7th round, those guys look like some ballers right now, and I think they're going to impact this team, not in the future, but in 2011.
I'll tell you what, I think a lot of Ravens fans just gave a sigh of relief when Bruce said that he liked what Ozzie did and picked up the corners this year because that's the big question mark going into the season as far as the defense goes. Kerry Williams, a guy that's been on the roster for a few years, Bruce, and he's made a huge impact in the preseason. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does when he suits it up against the Steelers. And then, as you mentioned, Jimmy Smith will probably get the start. I don't think if Foxworth may not be ready yet, but for you to say that you're impressed with the Ravens' defensive backfield right now, I think that's a big sign of good things for the Ravens' defense.
Well, Bobby, because I think they're going to have to put more pressure, and in other words, they're going to have to send more people after the quarterback. They're going to have to blitz a little bit more by sending 6 people, and it's going to come from everywhere. I think Chuck Pagano is the kind of guy, it doesn't matter where they are. It's not going to be all down linemen or linebackers. You're going to see a lot of nickel and dime coming off the edge, blitzing the quarterback, and I think with those 2 strong young kids, very, very physical at the point of attack, they got long arms, they can reach, and they love to bang it up, and that's the first time we've had that. We haven't had that with our corners. Very small, very kind of frail. They get up and bump and run. They turn and run with you. It's like, I want to dance with you, Tony. No, I want to bang you in the face. So if I'm going to get up in your face, I got to put my hands on you and bang you around. We haven't had that before, and we'll see how it works out for them. Now, sure, they're going to make some mistakes. It's not all going to be pretty, but I think they're so physical and can run so well. I think it's a big plus.
Oh, you beat me to the punch about how Jimmy Smith fits in with a blitzing scheme from Chuck Pagano. Guys, all 7 of the draft picks, or 8 of the draft picks, made the team this year, so there were no cuts. So I think that also speaks to how strong, really, the draft was. And they had needs, offensive line, wide receiver, cornerback, defensive end. They addressed all those needs as well. Bruce, in the remaining time of this segment, quickly, Jimmy Smith, new cornerback in the secondary, you're a secondary guy. What's one piece of advice quickly that you give him as he starts out against Pittsburgh Sunday?
I'll tell you what, he is to listen to those safeties every time he lines up. His first thing is to find out who's in the game. As soon as those people leave, he gets up, who's in the game, 3 wides, 4 wides, who's in there, and then listen to those safeties. Those safeties have to nurture him along, Mike. They got to let him know it's 3rd and 6, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 6. You got to talk to him like he's a child. You know, and that's just the way it is. That's how I was brought up. That's the way it should be.
All right, more of the Ravens Wrap Show coming up as we diagnose the offseason. Good deal.
In April 1959, Art Wall won the Masters, edging out Carey Middlecoff and Arnold Palmer by finishing birdie, 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 par birdie. 1 month later, Ocean City Golf Club celebrated the opening of their first 18 holes. That course has been transformed now into one of the most scenic golf layouts on the East Coast. Come experience 36 of the most beautiful and challenging holes you'll find anywhere. Ocean City Golf Club in Ocean City, Maryland.
Beach Television Network. Your vacation starts here. Thank you for watching Beach Television Network.
Welcome back into the Ravens Wrap Show here on Comcast Beach TV and heard on the radio, 93.5 The Beach. Mike Bradley, we've got Bruce Laird, Tony Lombardi, and Bobby Vermillion. Guys, let's talk a little bit more about the offseason. We talked about the draft picks in the last segment, but the Ravens pretty busy in picking up guys who were cut from other teams or a big trade with Lee Evans. We'll start with you, Bruce. Tell me about what you liked and what the Ravens did.
Well, the most beautiful thing about the 100-some day lockout, man, the league didn't waste any time, did it? Nope. They got right back to action, spent a lot of money, over $200 million in the first 72 hours, and people were moving all over the place. I love Lee Reed. He's got to be here. He's got to play. That was a big, big pickup for us. And where we see this offense transgress and where they go is going to be big with the loss again of Todd Heap. I keep saying that. I really feel that Todd's going to hurt him not being here.
You know, one of the things that I thought of in this offseason, when you looked at Ozzie Newsome right out of the gate, you saw all these other teams just jumping into the fray and making plays for players to augment their rosters. And the Ravens weren't doing anything early on. And a lot of fans got a little edgy. But I have to love the way Ozzie showed patience. He was pragmatic, and he waited it out. And by waiting it out, he was able to get some values, and like Ricky Williams. Lee Evans is a guy that they pegged back in May that they wanted to get, and they thought that he could be shed from Buffalo's roster. So that was a guy that they waited for, and they nailed him. And Lee Evans, is like Bruce said, is going to make a big difference for the Ravens this season by stretching the defense, opening up the backside of those opposing defenses. And the other thing that I like about the Ravens is that they picked up guys like Garrod and McKinney to augment that offensive line. It was an Achilles heel from day one, and they've been able to address those things, and they've been doing it in an economical way.
And I think you make some great points, Tony. And one of the things that we talked about in the last segment was the defensive backfield. And one of the guys we didn't speak about was Bernard Pollard. I think you always hear we play like a Raven. Our guys that Ozzie goes out and gets are guys that play physical and are tough football players. I think Pollard fits into that. I think he's the perfect fit for that defense. And I was a little surprised, Bruce, and maybe you can speak to this. They picked Pollard up, but they've got Zbikowski and Nakamura. So I know those guys were really good on special teams, but I think a lot of people expected Zbikowski to step in this year.
There was no question. I thought he was absolutely going to win the starting job, and that just goes to the strength of Pollard coming out there. He almost looks like a linebacker. He's close to 210, a very rugged guy, very physical guy. Now his thing is going to be moving in space, and again, not making the mental mistakes. And that's where Ed Reed is going to be so important, especially if Pollard starts. If they get that situation, Ed's going to be the one that talks to these young players constantly to make sure that the mental part of the game, which is the hardest for a rookie, is mastered by them as best that they can. Because that's what's hard. You really wouldn't think that playing 65, 70 snaps is that difficult. But for a young kid out there, they lose it quickly mentally, and they forget where they are. That's where Reed's going to be very important.
And it's interesting, too, how different the three strong safeties are in terms of what they bring to the field. And Haruki Nakamura, Tom Zbikowski, and Pollard, they're so different. And I think when you listen to John Harbaugh, everybody wants to know who's the starter. Well, he's saying it depends on the situation, the game situation, who we're going against, how we can exploit their weaknesses, and which guy can do that the best. That's the guy that's going to see most of the snaps on the field.
And think about this, because both Zimmy and Nicky Moore can tackle pretty well. So you can get into dime situation, all right? You can get in that 7 defensive backs out there and not lose that physicality, especially if you can move Pollard up a little bit act him get to somewhat of a linebacker. And in my position, in my day, they moved me up into a 4-4 almost, and I was able, because I played at 197, 198, very physical kind of guy, you're able to play that linebacker role and then get another body that can really cover and run back there. I suspect that Chuck will use a lot of dime when he has to.
Guys, I want to get back real quickly to the offensive line. Bryant McKinney, that's a huge acquisition there. That moves Michael Orr back to right tackle. I think everybody could see after that Philadelphia Eagles preseason game, he just wasn't getting it at left tackle, and the Ravens didn't have time to wait for him. So they bring in Bryant McKinney. You talked about Andre Garrod, who comes in case Matt Burke goes down. But, Bobby, they've really done a nice job solidifying it. Mark LaVore also had some depth who they picked up from the New England Patriots. So all of a sudden, this offensive line in August that you felt really concerned about, now you feel pretty solid about it.
You really do, and it really speaks to what Tony mentioned just a few moments ago, and Ozzie was so patient and just kind of waited for that value. And I think, having the guys from the U on our team, whether it's Ray Lewis and Ed Reed, they talked to Brian, and I think they gave him a raging review. So I think the coaches feel comfortable with him. And there's also Brad Childress, who he played for in Minnesota. Brad knew him very well. Brad's not in football right now, and obviously I think he said some good things about McKinney as well. So he could be a huge addition. We just don't know how long it's going to take. He was 400 pounds before he got here. He's probably looking at 360, 370 at least right now.
Tony, quickly, Lee Evans, that nice vertical compliment, a veteran compliment to Torrey Smith, takes a lot of pressure off of the rookie.
No doubt about it. And, you look at the Ravens last year, you can't keep doing the same things the same way and expecting different results, like particularly against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Derek Mason, as much as we love him, he's not a guy that can take the top off of defense. He and Anquan Bolden, and even before Anquan Bolden, Mark Clayton, very similar receivers. You got to be able to stretch the defense. It's an overused cliche, but you need to do it to free up space underneath.
And Tony, when you mention that, when you get to that real quick, that's when teams with personnel can play that tight double man. Everybody's locked up underneath. When double man means they're locked up underneath with safety help over the top, and that will be harder now with Evans.
More of the Ravens Wrap Show next.
Ravens Wrap is brought to you by Bud Light, FlyLady.net, Ocean City Golf Club, Comfort Inn Gold Coast, Ravens247.com, the original Green Turtle Sports Bar and Grill, and hosted by the Blue Ox Bar and Grill. Ravens Wrap is brought to you by Bud Light, FlyLady.net, Ocean City Golf Club, Comfort Inn Gold Coast, Ravens247.com, the original Green Turtle Sports Bar and Grill, and hosted by the Blue Ox Bar and Grill.
Welcome back in the Ravens Wrap Show from the Ravens Room here, the Blue Ox, 127th Street in Ocean City here, the Ravens Wrap Show on Comcast Beach TV and 93.5 The Beach. And it's our time for our Ravens 24/7 Insider segment with Editor-in-Chief Tony Lombardi. And Tony, I want to start out with the end-of-year press conference with the Ravens last year. The Ravens were fairly candid about offensive coordinator Cam Cameron, about liking him under fire. Being as PR savvy as they are you kind of surprised that they were that candid with the fans and the media about his job security this year?
I think that all comes from Steve Bisciotti, Mike, because when you look at some of the things he's done in the past with Brian Billick, he was very candid. We've had him down here at this show. He's been very candid here. So I'm not surprised by it at all. And I've been told that it was Steve Bisciotti who really wanted to put Cam Cameron under fire, because I'm hearing that he didn't want him around. He didn't want him to be the offensive coordinator. He wanted to make a move, but John Harbaugh went to bat for his offensive coordinator, and that's why he's still here. So he's got him under fire, and I think that's Steve Bisciotti's way of saying, you better make some changes or you'll be changed.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a safe bet that Cam Cameron also, with the fact that, with the lockout, having to change offenses would have been very difficult for the Ravens this year. So I think that was something, obviously, that was in, John Harbaugh's corner to be able to argue.
No question about it, because when you look around the league at some of the teams that have new offensive systems or even new head coaches, they're under the gun. I mean, when they didn't have all those OTAs and everything was under under the pressure of camp, and it was all limited, and they had to get all these snaps and reps in preseason, I think that's something that the Ravens wanted to avoid. And I think when you have a quarterback like Joe Flacco, who's starting to come into his own, you really didn't want to undermine him by having a new coordinator coming in.
Let's do some rapid fire with some of the other coaches. Quarterbacks coach Jim Zorn let go, offensive line coach John Matsko let go, and Al Saunders goes to Oakland to join Hugh Jackson to be his offensive coordinator. But talk about two of the three who were fired. What was behind that?
I think with Jim Zorn, they just wanted to take away Joe Flacco's whoopee.
His little blankie?
His little blankie. I think that's what they wanted to do.
Need his little blankie?
Yeah, his little Linus. Here's a guy, Jim Zorn, whose personality was a lot like Joe Flacco's, and I think to challenge Joe, you've got to be a little bit different, and he wasn't. And I think that had a lot to do with why he was let go. Plus, the Ravens said there were too many voices in Joe Flacco's ears when you have Al Saunders, and you have Jim Zorn, and you have Cam Cameron, and they all weren't on the same page all the time, so that could be confusing.
Chuck Pagano, new defensive coordinator now. Greg Madison wasn't fired. He took the job at Michigan. It was a dream job. His daughter's up there, new baby, so it's the one job he said he would take. But if he had come back, would there have been a mandate from John Harbaugh that, hey, we've got to get after it? Because clearly we're seeing in the preseason, Chuck Pagano got after it with the blitz packages.
I think somewhere along the line that John Harbaugh would have had to find a way to get his coordinator to get more pressure on the quarterback. And if that meant blitzing more, if it meant to stop these three-man rush when it was in the red zone kind of thing, all these kinds of things that drove fans crazy, I think that there would have to be some changes, because 27 sacks, Mike, is not going to get it done in the NFL.
Absolutely. You take a look at the draft this year, Jimmy Smith, first-round pick, defensive pick, but a majority of the picks were offensive. Is that a change in philosophy for the Ravens, that they want to get more offensive, or are they just trying to balance out this roster?
I think it's just a question of drafting the best player available, and I think when you look at this draft top to bottom, it was a really, really solid draft. And it's really hard to say that out of the gates. It's 2011, these guys haven't stepped on the field in a regular season game yet, and everybody's really excited about these guys. If you think back to 2010, 2009, you thought maybe there was a good draft, but you're seeing some results from these guys already, so you got to like that. And I think that the Ravens are going to, they're just going with the best player available. Balance is the way to win the NFL, and I think they're trying to get balance.
Have to talk about Black Monday. Some very productive Ravens were let go. You look at Kelly Gregg, Derek Mason, Todd Heap, and even Willis McGahee. He was only with the team 3 years, had some 20 touchdowns. What was behind that, and were any of those guys trying to be brought back?
What we found out later in camp or later in the offseason was that the Ravens were really close to the salary cap. When they had the new collective bargaining agreement, they cut it back to $120 million. They found that they were really under the gun. They had to make some changes. So when you bring in a guy with a third-round pick last year in Ed Dickson, a fourth-round pick in Dennis Pitta, you got to think that they're going to make some changes at tight end, and they did. When you look at Derek Mason, we talked about that earlier. You know, he's a lot similar to Anquan Bolden. They brought in Lee Evans, so they had that under the radar or on the radar screen. So when you look at those kinds of things and you look at what the Ravens have done, I think that they did all the right things. And of those guys, Mike, the guy I think you're going to miss, and Bruce touched upon it earlier, is Todd Heaton.
We talked about a little bit earlier, Lee Evans. You said that was somebody they targeted back in May, so we'll talk about him a little bit later. The offensive line, again, talk about Bryant McKinney, Andre Gerard that was brought in. Do you like the moves? I mean, I argue that, you know, these are guys that are coming off of pretty good years. They're not pedestrian guys coming off the street. That I thought it was a good move. Your thoughts on that, and how quickly can they get up to speed?
Well, I think it's a testament to Ozzy's patience. We talked about that earlier, too. And there's a lot of people that are concerned about this offensive line gelling. And I'm not trying to undermine or underscore the fact that gelling for an offensive line is important and working together. But these guys are solid pros. Look at the Pro Bowl resumes across the board. And you look at that offensive line, they're really good players. And gelling is important, I think, in the long run, but in the short term, I think it's something that the Ravens fans don't have to worry about, particularly against Pittsburgh Steelers.
Tony Lombardi, Ravens 24/7 Insider. Thanks. We'll be back with more of the Ravens Wrap Show next.
In April 1959, Art Wall won the Masters, edging out Carey Middlecoff and Arnold Palmer by finishing birdie, 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 par birdie. 1 month later, Ocean City Golf Club celebrated the opening of their first 18 holes. That course has been transformed now into one of the most scenic golf layouts on the East Coast. Come experience 36 of the most beautiful and challenging holes you'll find anywhere. Ocean City Golf Club in Ocean City, Maryland.
Beach Television Network. Your vacation starts here. Thank you for watching Beach Television Network.
Welcome back. The Ravens Wrap Show at the Blue Ox, 127th Street at Ocean City, here on Comcast Beach TV and on the radio, 93.5 The Beach. And to my left, Bruce Laird, Tony Lombardi, and Bobby Vermillion. And I want to thank our sponsors again, Bud Light, FlyLady.net, Ocean City Golf Club, Comfort Inn Gold Coast, of course, Ravens247.com, the original Green Turtle, and the Blue Ox right here, where we have lovely surroundings. The Ravens room, they've done a great job here.
This room rocks, doesn't it?
It does.
Guys gotta get out of here.
I like this. I like this. We got A+ treatment here. So, guys, let's talk a little bit about the offseason, some changes with the NFL. We had a new CBA. We'll talk about that in a second. But one of the new rules, the kickoff rule, Bruce, I mean, there are some guys that now they're kind of insignificant in terms of their role on the team, unfortunately, like a Prescott Burgess who got cut by the Ravens a few weeks ago.
You know, that guy that used to be on the right side, it was number 3 from the end. They called it 1, 2, 3. It was R3 and L3. Those guys were the biggest guys on kickoff return because they were the guys that went after the football. Now you just run 60 yards or 55 yards and have a smoke and a Coke. And if you're lucky, you can get an SK dog in on the way. I mean, there's so many balls going to be going in the end zone. I think it was a PR move, quite frankly, by the league and the union.
For safety, right, Bruce?
Safety. First of all, years ago, you can't block low. You can't knock anybody down low. You can't take the wedge. They took the wedge out of it a couple years ago. So it's one-on-one. They're all doing this anyway. I think they took away a big play. I don't like it.
Tony, scoring, I mean, last year, 16% of the teams that started at the 20-yard line scored. That's not what the NFL wants. It'd be curious to see how long this thing's really around for.
That's a great stat, Mike. And, when you take a look at a team like the Cleveland Browns, Josh Cribbs, Devin Hester for the Chicago Bears, I mean, those are exciting playmakers that those teams paid a lot of money for. And guess what? They're not going to be able to do the things that they want to do. Because how many times, if Billy Cundiff faces Josh Cribbs, he's going to do that twice this year. Right. How many times do you think Josh Cribbs is going to return one? 0. No. If they happen to play the Chicago Bears, it'd have to be in the Super Bowl. But if they did, how many times would Devin Hester return? 0. So it takes away a big, exciting part of the game. And I don't know, as a fan, Bobby, I don't like it at all.
I mean, I can't say any more than you guys have said. Basically, it's one of the biggest plays in a football game, and the most exciting plays coming from a timeout. You go into a kickoff, you're excited about maybe the guy running it back, or maybe if you're the team kicking off, getting a turnover in that situation. And for Ravens fans, we had Billy Cundiff, who set the NFL record last year with touchbacks. I don't see anybody return the ball, and I know the Ravens adjusted their roster accordingly to their special teams. And as you mentioned, Mike, it cost some guys some jobs, and one was Prescott Burgess, the leading tackler on special teams last year on kickoffs, and he's gone now. So I think it's going to be just a big effect around the NFL, and it's, as a fan, it's sad to see it go.
Bruce, I know you'd probably be happy back in the day. Reduced practice time, another one of the changes, OTAs from 14 to 9, but also practices, training camp not nearly as strenuous. I kind of think the pendulum swung a little too far the other way. What's your thoughts about that?
Well, it certainly has for young teams. Teams that need those reps, those practice reps, and then they're starting to take away. You're only in pads once a day. You can go out, but it's shortened helmets in the morning or the afternoon, whatever you prefer, but you're not hitting as much. They're taking that away. For younger teams that need to build that camaraderie, it's obviously not about the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Ravens, but for teams that need those repetitions, and you got to do things at full speed. You try not to do that. I think it hurts those teams, but that's one of the things that we're going to see happen. Let's see what the first month of this season looks like league-wide. I'll be interested to see what kind of games are played, how many teams are losing games instead of the other team beating them in a game.
Let's switch gears a little bit quickly. The AFC North, Cleveland, Cincinnati. You got new head coaches, new coordinators. Tony, it's typical year. Ravens and Steelers at the top, and everybody else is trying to play catch-up.
Yeah, that's the way it is. I mean, it's the haves and the have-nots. You've got a team in Cincinnati. We talked about it earlier in the program, Mike, that when you have a new offensive system or you have a new quarterback, as they do a young quarterback, Carson Palmer's no longer there, that's going to be an adjustment for that team. A lot of turnover in their offensive system and in their offensive personnel. Cleveland, just a brand new coach. You've got Colt McCoy, a young guy who's trying to adapt to a new system. So I think the Cleveland Browns and the Cincinnati Bengals are teams in adjusting years, and it's back to the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens, and it's just the black and blue, the black and gold, and the purple and black, and it's just the way it's supposed to be in the AFC North, Bobby.
Tony, I agree, but I know you followed the draft very closely, and Cleveland had a lot of picks in this year's draft, so I expect that team to get better. I really like Colt McCoy. I think he played very well last year. I expect Cleveland to improve this year, and down the road, I think they're going to be a pretty good football team.
Bruce, you were all-pro safety. You look at the Philadelphia Eagles in the offseason, their secondary. Nnamdi Asomugha. You've got Antonio Rogers-Cromartie you pick up in the trade with Kevin Kolb. And then, you've got, of course, the guy from New England that they picked up, Asante Samuel, a few years ago. That's a heck of a three-cornered trio there.
It certainly is. And this is what you do with corners like that. There's times that you'll sit there, depending on who you're playing, you'll tell those guys early in the week, you know what, we're not going to give you much help. We're going to cut the running game right off at the knees. We're going to send people, and it's up to you guys to cover man-to-man. And you really put it on each and individual player that you have like that. We did that at times, and it's hard in the corners, but they got to know what they have to do there, and they certainly have the personnel to go ahead and do that.
Well, we'll see if that dream team truly is a dream team. More of the Ravens Wrap Show next.
Ravens Wrap is brought to you by Bud Light, FlyLady.net, Ocean City Golf Club, Comfort Inn Gold Coast, Ravens247.com, the original Green Turtle Sports Bar and Grill, and hosted by the Blue Ox Bar and Grill. Ravens Wrap is brought to you by Bud Light, FlyLady.net, Ocean City Golf Club, Comfort Inn Gold Coast, Ravens247.com, the original Green Turtle Sports Bar and Grill, and hosted by the Blue Ox Bar and Grill.
And welcome back in the Ravens Wrap Show here from the Ravens Room, 127th Street and Coastal Highway here at the Blue Ox, our new digs here, beautiful Ravens Room. Hey, I want to thank some sponsors, Bud Light, FlyLady.net, Ocean City Golf Club, Comfort Inn Gold Coast, Ravens247.com, the original Green Turtle, and of course the folks here at the Blue Ox Bar and Grill. It is time for Pro's Perspective, former All-Safety Baltimore Colt Bruce Laird. And Bruce, let's talk a little bit about the Ravens, their off-season acquisitions and the changes offensively from a defensive point of view. You know, under Brian Billick, the Ravens ran a West Coast offense. Cam Cameron comes in a few years ago. It's more of a vertical stretch, big hitting type offense, which, takes some time for the quarterback back there to be able to wait for guys to get open. Finally this year, you trade for Lee Evans, you draft Torrey Smith, David Reed you draft last year, all vertical type guys that now complement your intermediate guys. Talk about what those guys finally do to the defense and helping out the offense of Joe Flacco.
Well, I think it certainly does a lot more with first and down for Cam and Joe. What he can do now is actually throw the ball. He doesn't have to come off of play action all the time. And that's what the Ravens have been doing for the last couple of years under Cam Cameron. You notice when they're first and 10 passing game, if it's vertical at all, it's always off of play action. I think they're going to get more into the 3 wides, 1 tight end, 1 back kind of set with Ray Rice. And I think they need to throw the ball off a straight drop back and let Flacco take control a little bit more of the personnel sets that he has. And when I say about that, they're going to come a time in every game that every offense is going to run 7 or 8 personnel sets. And out of those personnel sets, 6 or 7 plays will be practiced and run for all that. So it really adds up to quite a few plays. And let Joe take a personnel set, look at what he's looking at, pre-stop read, and then let him start checking off and let him take a little bit more control of the offense as the field general. And that has to happen in practice, obviously. So I see them throwing the ball without play action more on first and 10 and getting more of the deep crossing routes, the post corners, the skinny post fades, some of the things that Joe's able to do.
Last year, we had Derek Mason, TJ Hushmanzada, and Anquan Bolden, all guys with 600 catches or more, and we thought, this offense is going to be prolific in the passing game. But you take a look back, Bruce, and you played in San Diego after your career with the Colts for a little bit. You know the Air Coryell system. It really doesn't match the Air Coryell system with those amount of intermediate route runners. It seems like now the players finally fit the personnel.
No, there's no question. And again, if you're sitting there in that 12 to 15 to 18, the 18 to come back to 15-yard out and keep working the outside. Derek Mason made a living outside the numbers. Joe Flacco was very familiar with it. Bolden likes inside the numbers, inside the hashes. What I really think they have to do is stretch the field. The Ravens, by the way, 2nd or 3rd worst in long plays, whether running play or passing play, a play over 20 yards. They have to be more explosive. And here's why. Once you're in the 2nd and long or 3rd and long, I'm talking about 2nd and 8 plus, 3rd and 8 plus, what we will do as a defense, we will let you run the football. We want you to run the football so we can get up and tackle. But we will go to a double man situation, just really choke you down and know you have help over the top and let those good corners, like the Jets we were talking about earlier, maybe the Ravens, let them choke down, knowing that they have help over the top. And Joe's got to really thread the needle. And that is what you got to stay out of. You must control first and 10. Defensively, that's what I want to do. Offensively, they want it 2nd and 3rd or 4th. Defensively, I want it 2nd and 8 and 9.
You think this year with the offense that Cam may not expand the playbook, but he's going to use different parts now that he has those vertical type guys that really fit the playbook and the philosophy of the Air Coryell system?
I think he has to. There's no question about it. There's only one way to beat a defense. You have to fear the big play. You have to look at that situation where that personnel set in. Every time I played, who's on the field, who can hurt you? And if you look at that and you don't have anybody that they never really had. I mean, we had Stallworth last year, right, gentlemen? Wait, we ran 3 reverses and went deep twice. I mean, if I'm playing Stallworth, I'm going reverse and the bomb. Again, that's what you see. You have to scare people. You got to make those coordinators think about what these other players can do to you.
Let's switch to defense. Chuck Pagano, new defensive coordinator, blitz happy type coach, very similar to Rex Ryan. He comes from a secondary position where he coached the DBs, where Rex Ryan was a defensive line coach. How will the DBs play into this new defense?
Well, first of all, if Pagano wants to really push the thing, he's got to let these guys know that we're going to get to the quarterback within 3 seconds. And how he does that, he's going to have to send 5 or more. And I think he has the personnel to do that. Madison really didn't have the personnel to do that. He would have loved to blitz more, but if he did, with the corners we had and the personnel that we had, I think he would have been toasty. I think it would have been the little flip up in the toaster. They would have been a little burnt a lot. You know, the Pop-Tart. Exactly. So, I mean, Chuck's going to have the personnel. Let's see if they can get to him.
I asked you this before, just quickly in closing. Advice for the young new corners out there. You said,
listen to your daddy, man. Listen to those safeties in there.
why am I surprised you said, or why am I not surprised you said listen to the safety?
I mean, there's something very big. When you're a young player, seriously, you're out there, you just know where you are, and you know what the defense is. Other than that, you're not thinking about what Ben is doing to you or all this other stuff. And that's the safety's job, to let them know what could be coming.
Bruce Laird, the Pro's Perspective, here on the Ravens Wrap Show.
Hey!
In April 1959, Art Wall won the Masters, edging out Carey Middlecoff and Arnold Palmer by finishing birdie, 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 par birdie. 1 month later, Ocean City Golf Club celebrated the opening of their first 18 holes. That course has been transformed now into one of the most scenic golf layouts on the East Coast. Come experience 36 of the most beautiful and challenging holes you'll find anywhere. Ocean City Golf Club in Ocean City, Maryland.
Beach Television Network. Your vacation starts here. Thank you for watching Beach Television Network.
Welcome back to Ravens Wrap Show from the Ravens Room, the Blue Ox, 127th Street and Coastal Highway. Ravens Number 44. We're on Comcast Beach TV and on the radio, 93.5 The Beach. Ravens
Do we have to
affiliate here
remind
on
them that it's Steelers week?
No,
It's Steelers week. I mean,
Steelers.
I don't think so. It's you know.
There you go. It's Ravens week.
It's always Ravens week.
Well, it's here, folks. I mean, Ravens Steelers Sunday, M&T Bank Stadium, 1 o'clock, and time to break down the offense against Pittsburgh's defense. And Bobby, we talked about the acquisitions the last couple of breaks, and Lee Evans, Torrey Smith, David Reed, vertical stretches. Finally, Troy Polamalu may not be down at the line of scrimmage anymore. Thank God.
well, you know what? What a way to start off the 2011 season. Our first game of the year against, obviously, our rivals and bitter rivals at that, the Pittsburgh Steelers. And when you take a look at the Ravens' offense against the Pittsburgh defense, one of the things that has stood out a lot to me is a lot of the national pundits are talking about the Ravens' defense and how they're getting along in the tooth. Well, if you take a look at the other side, at Pittsburgh's defense, Mike, there's a lot of guys, they've got all 11 guys coming back from last year. Obviously, they were in the Super Bowl, but they've got a lot of older guys on that football team. This is the one year that if I, as a Ravens fan, I'd like to say I would prefer to play Pittsburgh a little bit later in the season, the first time. But hey, it is what it is, like John Harbaugh said. I think we're going to find out early how effective our offensive line can be against one of the best defenses in football. And Bruce, one of the things I wanted to ask you this week was, how important is it for that offensive line that they've not played together? Obviously, Tony talked about this earlier. You've got a lot of guys that are good quality football players, but they haven't played together. They practice together, but they haven't played a game. How important is that going to be this week?
Well, I'll tell you, with the crowd noise and everything and the excitement and the first game of the season, I don't care whether you played 1 year, 1 week, or 15 years in the league. That first game, your motor's running, you're very, very excited. It's going to be the call of Matt Burke or the center, whoever gets in there. And again, I think from their perspective, Cam Cameron's perspective, fellas, I think they're to keep it somewhat simple. And I'm going to be really surprised if they actually, I know they're going to run the ball. Let's say you never give up on the run. But Pittsburgh, you've never been able to do much. I think Cam's going to go to 3 wides, and I think he's going to keep it somewhat simple. I think it's going to be almost like a New England offense. They're going to go to 3 wides. They're going to go to 4 wides. They're going to move it around, spread it. They're going to throw the ball. If they run, it's going to be a draw or lag draw, or a little thing here, a little thing there. And I think that could be my move. With a group of players that haven't played together, it's much easier to pass block than it is to run block.
Well, one thing I have to say, too, and one of the guys we haven't talked about, the new addition for the Ravens, is Vontae Leach. Now, Tony, you've watched this guy. We've seen him play, obviously, at Houston. He's just a master. I think he's going to be an important part of their offense and probably their game plan against Pittsburgh. If they're going to simplify things, they're going to need to run the football, and I think he's going to be a big factor.
Yeah, I think the way they run the football, and Bruce talked about 1st and 10, the winning first down. I think the way you beat the Steelers is by winning first down through the air, not on the ground.
I agree.
And I think Vontae Leach becomes a factor then when it's 2nd and 5, and now you got two downs to get 5 yards. I think he's a battering ram. And Vontae Leach is a real good acquisition for this team because I think what he gives you is somebody that can really be a bruiser in November and December when the elements start to take effect in the NFL and you've got to run the ball more effectively. That guy's a battering ram. And we've seen what he can do with an undrafted free agent and Arian Foster. I wonder what he can do with Ray Rice.
2 things, Bruce, to bring up with this game. Back to the offensive line for a second. Being a player, you know that when you're learning something new, it could slow you down. And even with veterans, as you talked about, Bryant McKinney in there, possibly Andrew Gerard at center, you hope these guys aren't slowed by their play, and they can ill afford that against a really aggressive pass rush of Pittsburgh.
Oh, absolutely. And let's say, as Bobby just mentioned, listen, Pittsburgh brings back all 11 starters. Most of them, if not all of them, are 5 years experience. These guys are not thinking. They'll get up there, they'll know the call, they'll know the defense they're going to run, then they see the offense in front of them, and then they just play football. You're right about that. On an offensive line situation, it's all predicated by the center calls down the line. And once you get all these different looks and they're moving in and out, I think that the Ravens' offensive line is the key to this football game. And obviously, Joe Flacco is not a really quick starter. You don't see him coming out in the first 15 minutes and lighting it up that often. He's somewhat of a slow starter, and I think the first 15 minutes of this football game at home is going to be very critical.
Bobby, let me ask you real quick, or both of you guys real quickly. We've seen the map to beat, Pittsburgh Steelers, spread them out, 4 wides and all that. But do the Ravens have those guys at the 3rd and 4th wide receiver position, rookies, to be able to do that in a big game like this?
Do they have the guts to even try to do it? That's the question. In the past,
that's the best question.
I mean, I think that that's a great way to beat Pittsburgh. Obviously, we've seen that work against the Steelers, but will they have the confidence to do that with this new offensive line? Obviously, we talked about a lot of great pros on the offensive line, but they haven't played together. Will they have the guts to spread it out, or will they go conservative? My guess is I think they're going to stay conservative in this game.
And well, Bobby, once they spread it out, okay. Now here's the game that Steelers defense goes out. You dog them. You got to spread them out. You dog them, and then you got to get the sight adjustments and those other 2 wide receivers that we were talking about. Very potentially young kids, a lot of talent, but they haven't done it yet. So it's going to be a great cat and mouse game.
We'll talk about the defense against the Steelers offense next on the Ravens Wrap Show.
Ravens Wrap is brought to you by Bud Light, FlyLady.net, Ocean City Golf Club, Comfort Inn Gold Coast, Ravens247.com, the original Green Turtle Sports Bar and Grill, and hosted by the Blue Ox Bar and Grill. Ravens Wrap is brought to you by Bud Light, FlyLady.net, Ocean City Golf Club, Comfort Inn Gold Coast, Ravens247.com, the original Green Turtle Sports Bar and Grill, and hosted by the Blue Ox Bar and Grill.
Welcome back in from the Blue Ox, 127th Street and Coastal Highway in Ocean City on Delmarva's Rock Radio, 93.5 The Beach, and of course right here on Comcast Beach TV. It's Ravens Steeler Week, folks.
Mike, I think the Bud Light's kicking in.
Yeah, we got them going. Ravens Steeler Week.
I think you're right about that.
There we go. First game of the season.
Well, speaking of our fine sponsors, Bud Light, FlyLady.net, Ocean City Golf Club, Comfort Inn Gold Coast, Ravens247.com. Who got that in there? The original Green Turtle Sports Bar and Grill, and of course the fine folks here at the Blue Ox Bar and Grill. Folks, Ravens Steeler Week. Bruce Laird, I'll start with you. We've got almost a brand new secondary. Bernard Pollard, who we think is going to start at strong safety, although it seems like they may shuffle all three of those guys in and out depending on the packages. But it looks, by all accounts, Kerry Williams, Jimmy Smith going to be our starting corners, two different guys from last year.
And very young guys, but very athletic, can run very, very well. They're just going to have to be schooled to get into that situation where, you know, in college, you play a game, and for the most part, you usually are better. When you're that quality of player, you're usually better than your opponent. Now you're going to get four wideouts from Pittsburgh, very, very accomplished, all can run. You got Hines Ward, you got a mixture of these Wallace and new guys, and you got a good group of guys, the finest receiving core that Ben's had in a long, long time. So it's going to be a huge challenge for Pagano. And the key with young players, especially again, if Pagano wants to dog them, if he wants to send them, don't show Big Ben the blitz. If you're coming off something, you better hold your water, as they say, and don't show them that you're coming, because he'll take advantage of the young players.
Tony, we've talked about this the last couple of years. This is not your father's Pittsburgh Steelers. They're a team that likes to throw the ball. They're a possession-type, passing-type team, but Bruce just talked about it. They've got a really fine receiving core. Mike Wallace, you know, you've got Hines Ward. We know about him. Emmanuel Sanders, Antonio Brown, Jericho Cotchery. Apparently some of the crowd disagrees, but you can't argue with some of those guys.
The whoopee cushion.
That wasn't Bobby, I can attest to that.
That was a whoopee cushion.
We'll be soon finding out down the line.
No, you look at this, the Ravens, and you look at, and Bruce touched on this earlier, Kerry Williams and Jimmy Smith. They're both tall, lanky guys who can make up ground if they're beaten, and they're guys that I think a coordinator like Chuck Pagano, who likes to take his chances, can trust that if they're going to leave those guys on an island, that they can make up some ground. Plus, you don't have, as much as I like Josh Wilson, leaving him on an island, the tall receivers that the Steelers have that they can throw out there on the field. I mean, that's a challenge for a guy like Josh Wilson. It's not for Jimmy Smith or for Kerry Williams. So for that reason, I think those guys give Chuck Pagano some options that he wouldn't have if he had a guy like a Josh Wilson on one end and even, let's say, Chris Carr on the other.
Bobby, let's talk about the pass rush. Terrell Suggs, big year last year, trying to find that complementary guy. It seems like it's more going to be by committee, whether it's Kruger or Kindle or maybe McLean on a blitz or, Ladarius Webb out of the nickel. They need to find, though, a complementary pass rush to Terrell Suggs, no matter who it is.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how many different packages Chuck Pagano comes up with. But one of the keys to this game, is like it always is that's getting to Ben Roethlisberger. You talked about how good the Steelers receivers are, and they do have some quality receivers, guys that can get down the field, and you've got to get to Ben. And the key to getting to Ben is, and we've seen it so many times as Ravens fans, you have to get to him and you have to put him on the ground. He's the guy that gets away from the initial guy who gets to him and makes a play down the field. We've lost so many games by not getting him on the ground when it comes to mind with Terrell Suggs last year. You have to get him down, and I think that's the key. Put pressure on him. As Bruce alluded to earlier, the corners can cover. We believe they're going to play a lot more press coverage, and so the Ravens need to get some turnovers. And one of the things I was thinking about today is the one guy on the Ravens defense that really hasn't had an outstanding game, hasn't had a big part of turnovers, is Ed Reed. Here's a guy that has had tremendous games, one of the greatest Ravens of all time, but when you think about the Ravens Steelers, you don't think about the great plays that Ed Reed has made. And maybe this game is the game that he has coming out with against the Steelers, makes a couple big plays, maybe he picks one off and takes it back for a touchdown. I know as Ravens fans, we'd love to see that.
There's no question about Ed, but one of the wonderful things that he always did, we had a saying for this when I played, and I think it's still out there. We called it WAG. It's called Wild Ass Guess. And let me tell you, when you do a wild ass guess and you make a big play, which Ed can do, it was wonderful. But if he does it this time, and even Pagano coached Ed Reed at the U in the University of Miami. So he was quoted, "How can you stop Ed from wagging?" He goes, I didn't do it when he was a sophomore, and I'm certainly not going to do it now. So, I mean, that's the kind of quality player he is. But with these young guys, Ed's really got to be more the mature, kind of fatherly-like guy. And if he's really got to help these young players and kind of shade certain times when he needs to.
Yeah, I think there's two. You have to look back at what the Ravens did against the Steelers last year. I think they actually put a lot of pressure on Ben Roethlisberger without having to do a lot of blitzing, which Greg Madison didn't like to do. So, you look at Terrell Suggs. Terrell Suggs is a flat-out Steeler killer. And I think he's going to do
some of the best games.
He's going to do more of that, I think, on Sunday. But I don't think you have to do a lot of blitzing with Ben Roethlisberger. In fact, the danger with Ben Roethlisberger, one thing we saw in preseason a lot of is Ladarius Webb coming off the slot as a blitzer. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not real happy about Ladarius Webb trying to bring down Ben Roethlisberger.
All right, we'll get our predictions coming up, and no WAG!
In April 1959, Art Wall won the Masters, edging out Carey Middlecoff and Arnold Palmer by finishing birdie, 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 par birdie. 1 month later, Ocean City Golf Club celebrated the opening of their first 18 holes. That course has been transformed now into one of the most scenic golf layouts on the East Coast. Come experience 36 of the most beautiful and challenging holes you'll find anywhere. Ocean City Golf Club in Ocean City, Maryland.
Beach Television Network. Your vacation starts here. Thank you for watching Beach Television Network.
Ready to go. It's Ravens Steelers week, and they've had a few brews as well. It's the Ravens Wrap Show here from the Blue Ox 127th Street and Coastal Highway in Ocean City here on Comcast Beach TV. Also on the radio, 93.5 The Beach, Delmarva's Rock Radio, and home of the Ravens. And of course, where you can hear the show as well, 11 to 12:30 leading up to the game. Well, guys, we're back at it here. Final predictions, and we'll get to that in just a few minutes. Kind of do our final analysis, but Ravens Steelers, best rivalry in the NFL. It's always been a smash mouth game, back and forth, low scoring, usually determined by 3 points. I think that's the spread, although don't quote me on that. Tony, we'll start with you. I mean, at this point, John Harbaugh 3 years in, Joe Flacco 3 years in. They've beaten the Steelers a couple of times, but not without Ben Roethlisberger hasn't been a quarterback. It's time to get over the hump now, though, Tony, right? I mean, the honeymoon really with John Harbaugh and Joe Flacco, it's off.
Yeah, I think the Ravens, the problem that they've had, whether it's been Ben Roethlisberger or somebody else, Charlie Batch, but mostly with Ben Roethlisberger, is they don't play for 60 minutes against the Steelers. And I've heard rumors that even Mike Tomlin is aware of that, makes his team aware of that. Play 60 minutes of football, whistle to whistle, and you're going to win this football game because the Ravens haven't been able to put them away. And you've seen it time and time again. Last year, you could say that the Ravens should have beat them 3 times, and they didn't. They lost to them twice. So I think the important thing for the Ravens and for John Harbaugh's team, for him to remind his team, both sides of the football, offensively and defensively, and even on special teams, finish the game, play 60 minutes, Bobby.
Well, I think that's the key. I mean, it's amazing when you think about these two teams. And I'm sick of hearing about all the Steelers fans saying that it's not a rivalry because the Ravens can't beat the Steelers. The truth is they're 8-8 over the last 16 games. So it is a rivalry. You know, I'm not buying the fact that, you know, the Steelers are that much better of a team. And I don't know if it's the fact that the Ravens don't play 60 minutes. I think it's you know, we've made those key mistakes. We haven't made the big plays. And for whatever reason, you know, they have made the big plays. And to me, the difference between this team, we talked about it last year, and until it's proven different, we'll talk about it again this year, is the quarterback position. Right now, Ben Roethlisberger is a better quarterback than Joe Flacco, and until that changes, until we have a changing of the guard, we're gonna struggle against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Bruce, you know, the Ravens, give them credit. We talked about earlier, Black Monday, where they got rid of Kelly Gregg, Derek Mason, Todd Heap, Willis McGahee, productive members of the team, many of them for a long time. They've gone out, they've brought in players. I think they've kind of taken this offense and defense to the next level. Whether it happens week 1, we'll find out. But I think long-term of the 16-game season, I think the Ravens have done what they've needed to go back, adjust things, and make that further run to the AFC Championship game in the Super Bowl. What do you think?
Well, there's certainly, I think they're going to be a better team as the year goes on, especially as the offensive line gels with all the new faces and all going over the right side. But at the end of the day, can John Harbaugh and the coaching staff talk to this new group of guys, 17 new players on the Baltimore Ravens? Can they talk to them about, I know it's the first game, control your emotions, but you got to think of it as a playoff game? I don't know if the young guys can understand that. This is a huge, huge football game for this franchise. First of all, 12-4 each of them, but it's home. It sets the tone for everything. I don't know if the younger players can handle, again, 60 minutes of football. We will see. We will see. But the key to this situation is the first 15 minutes of this football game. Can the Ravens stay in it? And let's see what Ben and Joe can do.
Tony, I think Bruce brings up an excellent point. It's week 1. There's still 15 games left no matter what happens here. But it's a huge game. That could decide the division. You don't want, even if the Ravens are better week 9 when we play the Steelers again, you don't have to rely on going up there and winning to try to get back the division lead.
No, you don't want to be in that situation because, let's face it, it's a 2-team race in the AFC North. It's between the Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And they've got to bring it. These two teams are so familiar with each other. But the difference, in my opinion, is that there's more new personnel on the Ravens team that makes the Steelers have to take pause. When you're so familiar with another opponent, it's about execution. But there's some wild cards in this, and we can talk about that in a minute. But when we do our predictions, but I think there's some wild cards in this game that are going to benefit the Ravens.
Well, let's get to it. Give plenty of people time here. Bobby, give us your final analyzation here of how it's going to turn out.
Well, I'm going to go with the good news first. I think the Ravens will win the AFC North. I think they will win at Heinz Field in November. But week 1, I don't like their chances. I just think that there's too many new players, as Bruce alluded to. It's going to be a tough out for the Baltimore Ravens to beat the Steelers. The fact that the Steelers are bringing back most of their players from last year's Super Bowl team, I think is a huge advantage, particularly in a year when you haven't had the mini camps and the Ravens hadn't had a chance to play together. So I'm going to give the nod to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to call it 21-20. I think it's going to be a close game, but I think the Steelers win.
Guys, we got about 45 seconds here, so make it quick. All right, Bobby brings up some really good points,
But I'm going to disagree with him. I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why, because the monkey on Joe Flacco's back is like a gorilla. It's King Kong right now. He's ready to get that monkey off his back. I'm going with the Ravens, 27-23.
I'm going to go with my golfing buddy. I hate to do it, but I'm going to say the Pittsburgh, and for 2 reasons. The defensive front of Pittsburgh, the offensive line of the Ravens, and Ben versus Joe.
All right, I've got to concur, 1916 Steelers. Guys, it's been a great inaugural Ravens Wrap Show. We look forward to next week.
Ravens Wrap is brought to you by Bud Light, FlyLady.net, Ocean City Golf Club, Comfort Inn Gold Coast, Ravens247.com, the original Green Turtle Sports Bar and Grill, and hosted by the Blue Ox Bar and Grill.